system going, this being system going. Now for Berger, and I'll finish off with these, he then asks, well, what is it possible for this to break down? If there's a canopy, isn't it possible for the canopy to break apart? And there's a couple of different ways the canopy can break. This evil can come from outside. So in the United States, think of 9/11, right? Think of an attack people experience as this kind of crashing in from outside of our sacred canopy into our lives. And this is the problem of theodicy, which means the question of why is it that evil things happen? Especially for people in a social world that thinks everything's ordered, how is it that something can come from outside and disrupt us, right? Can disrupt our sense of order. There's other problems that can occur. As we've noted before, conversation can kind of stop. And somebody can kind of wander away from the social group physically, but also mentally or intellectually. This is the problem that Durkheim talked about. It's called anomie, which is the threat to the social order of feeling like you're not connected, feeling like you've kind of drifted off, like you're no longer a part. And then there's one other class, two other threats for Berger. Death is a big one, so it's the question in this person's head of, well, what happens when I'm no longer here, when I'm literally no longer a part of these plausibility structures, when I no longer experience the nomos, my social nomos, my order, my connections, because I'm dead. Where do I go? That's a threat. And finally, there's one other threat, which is, aren't there other sacred canopies out there? So oftentimes I've been using the example of the United States. Well, what about India? Don't they have a sacred canopy over here, some far in the distance? What about China? Or if we talk about religions, what about Catholicism? What about Protestantism? What about Judaism? Mormonism? Can these all really be sacred canopies? Well, Berger's conception is that sacred canopies can start to clash. So if we look at this big one here, we come back and we say, let's say this is 1900 Protestant America. Well, what happens when this big old canopy of Catholics shows up? So a big group of Catholics and their nomos, their understanding of the social world shows up. What does that do? Well, Berger predicted that that means that this showing up of this other social group, which I've drawn part of, starts to threaten people in both social groups because they go, wait a second, if they've got a different ordering system, meaning-making system, a different nomos, a different relation with the cosmos, then is mine not unique and not important and not viable and not true? That was Berger's theory, at least. What we find out, actually, in the decades since Berger's written, is it might be that these kind of threats of pluralism, different religious groups, actually might make people more religious, because it might turn people more towards, well, what makes us unique? What makes our connection with each other and with the cosmos particularly unique vis-a-vis others? Okay, so I've said quite a bit today. Hopefully I tried to elucidate a bunch of Berger reading that I did. So let me finish by saying for Tuesday,